Hey, Paul.
Hello, are we ready? It says
We are live.
We are live. Let's go.
Let's do this.
Are we live yet?
We are live. Let's go.
We're live.
Oh, this is scheduled. It doesn't say live on my end.
Oh.
It says scheduled for all of us, 33 seconds in.
Mhm.
All right. Well, that slight technical difficulty there, but I'm Paul. Welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Businesses podcast, and I'm joined by Ian, Ken, Dan, and Jen, and we're doing a little bit of a dive here into there's a lot of things going on right now. Google core algorithm updates, quality content, bad content, thin content, backlinks, bad links, broken links, and there's a lot of information out there. A lot of it is outdated. If you can do a Google search on things related to SEO, and you'll come up with things that 3 years ago may have been valid, but they're no longer valid. Google makes changes on a daily basis, most minor, but some major, which is one that just rolled out, which brought us to this topic, and it's hard to keep up. So with all that being said, let's get started. And Ian, I'm going to start with you. Google just rolled out a major core update. So can you explain what that is and what have you seen or heard about its effects?
Yeah, so just to kind of take a step back, Google usually Google doesn't tell us what they're doing as an industry, and so as an SEO industry, as those who watch these things from a marketing side, we're always trying to determine what Google's done. Sometimes Google gives brief hints. Sometimes they give us here's the big things that are going to be happening, but not truly the effects. And so algorithmic changes are really where they're tinkering with the back end of Google search in order to make their searches better, more relevant. And it's always, well, for the most part anyways, it's usually focused on the end user. So what the experience of the user who's searching for things, the results they're getting, and how that affects them, because Google wants to be the best search engine out there. So that's kind of the purpose of algorithm changes, just to, bring it down to the 101 level. When we talk about core changes, these are usually significant changes to the algorithm, and the result of those is usually some big fluctuations to website ranking results. It might affect your traffic to your website, organic traffic to your website. And so as an industry, we watch what happens and we try to gauge, okay, is this affecting my site? Is it affecting my mine and my clients' rankings? And usually there's kind of a cooling off period after any of these changes take effect, because usually they're not overnight. Usually there are fluctuations when these things happen. And so the very best thing, just like kind of watching a big wave off an ocean liner come in, you kind of just point your boat towards the wave and you ride it out. And then once it's passed, you gauge, have we risen in rankings? Have we lowered? What's happened? One of the other things I should mention is Google's also launched another type of update, and it's really focused on page experience and user experience on your pages. And this is really important because Google wants to make sure that, as far as relevance goes and user experience goes, page speed is really important. How, there's different elements that, especially if you go to some, I would call them less savory sites, but sites where they're really heavy on advertising and they're trying to get you to click on ads and the site moves around. I think everybody's experienced that, where you go to click on the next button because you want to get to the next part of the article and it jumps and you click on the ad and you're like, no, I didn't want the ad. And so Google's trying to actually weed those things out a bit, because they see page experience and user experience as part of the quality of clicks they send you to. And so that's something that Google has just launched, and that's really important as well.
Yeah, that what you just said, that goes back to content shift, and it's part of the core web vitals, which we don't have time to go into now. That could probably be its own topic, but Ken, John Mueller, I think it was him, could have been Gary Illis, but it said one time that Google doesn't rank websites, they rank web pages. And I think that's important for people to understand, because people they do a search, they find their business on Google, and they think that's their website. I mean, can you explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's easy for all of us. And, I mean, we usually talk about SEO. We talk about, getting a website to rank, right? Or does my website rank, if you're, looking for help or things like that. And so we use that language. And so I think a lot of people think it's literally the website that ranks, but really you've got to have all of the foundational elements, all of the supporting pages, the blog posts, all of those things contribute to the overall website ranking, so to speak. And so each and every page gives you a unique opportunity to rank for a search phrase. And Google is going to go do its best to crawl that page and understand what is the main focus of that page. And, it's going to index that for search results based on, and then it will deliver that dynamically as somebody does a search and it says, okay, this is a great match, and it's going to serve that page. So Google doesn't, I mean, it's also an easy trap to fall into, because a lot of people Google their business name, and of course their main website shows up, their homepage. Well, their homepage is actually the page that's ranking. It's not the website. But and the reality is, most, typically for most businesses, the top ranking pages are frequently going to be your homepage. Maybe your about page is going to rank pretty well as well. Those are usually the two predominant ranking pages. So it's really, again, I think you have to think at the atomic level. You have to think about each and every page. That's why we stress, and why we talked about last week, in the basic 101 content, you got to have a page for every service that you do if you want to try to rank for that service, really. And if it's a local focus, you want to make sure that you're not only talking about that service, but also for that location. You may even specifically want to have individual location pages. Frequently you do, to help you rank when people are searching, because it's, your website ranking overall is the cumulative effect of how successful each and every one of your pages are. And that's why this thing about SEO is, I get so frustrated when people are telling me, oh, but I got a quote for somebody to do SEO for me for $150 a month. And it's like, that's not really SEO. SEO requires a lot of effort, because each and every page has to be continually assessed and evaluated to see, have you done everything you can to help that page rank? A lot of the basic blocking and tackling, there are probably 7 to 10 low-hanging fruit items that you need to do on each and every page to get it to rank. And that's just the on-page stuff. That doesn't factor in the interconnectedness of the pages that you set up through internal linking. It doesn't include any external linking from websites linking back to your website. It doesn't include the, it should now, I guess, it definitely should now include the user experience on the page, for sure. That didn't used to be a big factor in what we refer to as on-page SEO. But really, it's an easy trap to fall into, thinking it's just my website that ranks. No, it's each and every page that gives you the opportunity to rank. It has been that way for a long time.
Just to throw you for a loop, I when I was doing some research recently, I came across something that was brand new. It was I don't know if it was John Mueller. I can't remember who they were referencing, but it was somebody asking. I think it was from Search Engine Land or something like that. One of the authority sites was interviewing a Google employee, and they were talking specifically about the overall quality score of a website and if such a thing existed. And up till now, there's never been any hint that something like that existed. And the employee agreed that there is something within the algorithm that is looking at, of course, every individual page, just like you said, Ken, but it's also taking the amalgamation of the site and basically giving it a score that way too, because they want to make sure that you just don't have one great piece of content and one piece of topic. They're trying to look at the overall experience of somebody coming to your site, and I thought that was interesting. That was the first time I'd seen an industry expert talking about that.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And what Ken alluded to, didn't come right out and say it, but he implied it, is that your home page is not your website. In Google's eyes, it's just another page. Now, it may be the best ranking and the most visible, but as far as Google's concerned, your home page is just another page, just like your about page, just like a blog on your website, just another page. Jen, we just did a podcast on content, so let's look at that a bit. What is thin content, and does thin or duplicate content, does it actually draw a penalty from Google, or will they just basically ignore it and not rank it?
Well, it's funny that the word thin is used. It's probably the only place where, you don't want to have that adjective. Thin for other things in life are great, but not for your content. So in all seriousness, the thin content, it would mean that there's not a lot being said on the page. There's not a lot of information. Maybe there's a whole lot of words, but it's not saying very much. It's not very helpful at all. So that's what thin content means. That you look up on a website for an answer or more information, and you get to the bottom of reading it, and you're like, I don't really know. What I was going to say is, I don't really know what this means. It's not as if it's written as some kind of scientific blog or something like that. That's way above your head. It's just a whole lot of not saying very much. So with thin content, you're not answering the question. You're not providing any kind of value. My understanding is that Google simply ignores those web pages. Do I have that right, Paul?
Yeah, I think so. And, same thing with there's something called the canonical URL. And if Google thinks that a piece of content is the original source, and they see your piece of content as basically a duplicate of that, there's not really a penalty. They don't penalize you for it. They just ignore it and give the credit to the original source.
So, Paul, explain the canonical URL to everybody then.
The canonical URL is what Google sees as the original source of that content.
Mm.
Yeah.
So let's say, me and Jen do an almost exact piece of content, but Jen posted it first. Google is going to see that as the canonical or the original source of that content and give her credit for it. At least that's what they say.
That's what they say. But what does first mean? Does my stuff have to get out there a week ahead of yours or an hour ahead?
Well, it also comes back to authority, expertise, authority, and trust, and how now, if Google thinks that I am more of an authority on a topic than you or my website, they may give the credit to me. I remember I was in a forum a while back, and it was kind of funny. Someone was talking about duplicate content and people stealing content, and someone said, what do I do about this? And someone responded, facetiously, obviously, saying, make mirrors of your website because Google loves duplicate content. They love to rank it. And, it was kind of funny, but their algorithm is not perfect. And, we cannot control Google. And sometimes, yes, you may have a better piece of content and someone with a crappy piece of content ranks higher because for some reason, that's what Google's algorithm did. It's not fair, but neither is life.
Yeah. Also, in terms of the thin content, frequently when you're looking at, doing SEO analysis, it's very common that if a page has less than 300 words, it's going to be flagged in that tool as being thin content. Because 300 words really isn't enough content and context for Google to really figure out what that page is all about. So every page really, needs to exceed 300 words, frequently substantially more, especially if it's a very competitive phrase or concept that you're trying to rank for. But there are a lot of SEO analysis tools that will flag a page is having thin content when it's literally 300 words or less. And in that case, it's just literally a word count.
Yes, true. Absolutely true. Dan, there's basically two kinds of links on a website, internal and external. So what's the difference between that? And what if those links don't work? Is a broken internal link worse than a broken external link? And if so, why?
Yeah, I think the thing about, first of all, with broken internal links, I feel free to anyone to tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think it's the end of the world usually if you have a broken link, assuming that it's not, your home page or something, a core page or something. I think though the difference here is that if somebody goes to, let's say a search result and it's an external link and they click on it and it goes to a 404 page, which basically means there's nothing there. That's going to be pretty bad, because that means that they're going to have an expectation that hasn't been met. And are they then going to go, oh, that's okay, I'll just go and try another page? I don't think that's going to happen. What's different about an internal link is, let's say you click on that link off of a Google search, you go to a page on the website, all's good, and then you go, I'm going to check out this other page on that website because I kind of like where this is going. And then all of a sudden, you can't click because that has a 404. And that's a bad experience as well, because now I'm excited, I want to learn more about you, and then I can't. So one is I can't even get to your island, and one is I got here and, well, now I can't do what I wanted to do now that I'm here. Which one is different, worse? I mean, which one is worse than the other? I kind of err on the side of saying that the internal link is worse. I think the reason why I would say it's worse is it hurts more to know that someone was that interested and you got them on the hook and they're ready to take the next step and you blew it with an internal link. Because I always think that people just don't have that kind of patience that people think they do. Oh, they'll go to another page or they'll try. No, they're not. Like, their attention span is seconds. And I don't mean like 10 seconds. I mean like 5 seconds. So that's kind of my thinking on it, is that broken links that go to core things are never great. If it's a broken link that pops up, like, for example, I have an internal broken link and it's somewhere I got to find it deep in the code to correct it. And it's something that hasn't really been on my site for a very long time. I don't think that's the end of the world to try and correct that, because it's not coming up in search that much anymore or anything like that. Those are probably okay. You can live with that to some extent. You can't live with something where it's a core page and it's being seen and it comes up in search results and it's broken. That's never great. But fix the internal ones first and see where those are and how important they are to the experience.
Yeah, definitely. Because the way Google, an external link, maybe I should have asked you what is an external link and what is an internal link. Maybe I should explain that. An external link is if I'm on your website and I click on a link and it takes me to an external website for more information. Okay, that's what an external link is. The reason an internal link is worse is because, or broken internal link is worse, is because Google knows that you don't have control over an external website. They can change URL structure, move things. They know you don't have control over that. They assume that you have control of your website. So if you have a broken internal link, Google says you're responsible for that. So that is why a broken internal link is actually worse. Does that make sense to everyone?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's That definitely makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, you shouldn't, it shouldn't just be you have control. You do have control of your website. Maybe it's that you've outsourced it to somebody else, but Google, in the eyes of Google, you control what your website does. And
Yes.
anything that's broken, anything that loads slowly, anything that isn't a great user experience, anything that's sloppily done, anything that's not done, like putting meta titles on, pages or descriptions or things like that. Those are all signals to Google that you're not paying attention and taking care and feeding of the website. And Google's like, why would I trust you if I see that these fundamental things that should be taken care of aren't being taken care of? So that's, so on-page SEO is the thing that you can control. And on-page SEO does include internal linking. When you link to another page within your website. So I write a blog post about, the top 5 colors to paint your house, this summer. And then I link to another blog post that I wrote that talked about how to pick the right exterior paint color. I control that. Both of those pages are on my website. Shame on me if I screw up the link or it breaks somehow, some way. That's on me, and Google expects us to take care of that. If I write that article and then I link out to Sherwin-Williams' website as a painter from my painter website, well, Sherwin-Williams may decide that they no longer want to publish that post. They may delete that post. They may take it down. They may change the URL of it and not tell me. Why would they tell me? They don't know that they may or may not know that I linked to that content. But it's not on them to tell me, hey, go fix this link because I changed my URL or I took this page down. So that's really the whole thing. It's what is the span of control, and you better take care of the stuff that you can control on your website.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the things that we all have access to, every single person on this podcast has access to, if they wish to have it, is Google Search Console. And that is your window into how Google looks at your website. It's got tons of data. It will tell you if Google sees broken links and where they are and what they are. It will show you how Google views like what your average position ranking is, where your traffic is going, all of that stuff. And a lot of people ignore Google Search Console to their own peril, because if you want to rank well, you have to know how Google views you. And that's a key tool to that you should be, either someone at your business, or the person managing your website and SEO should be looking at for sure.
I think, one of the things, I'm sorry, I didn't, I was just going to say, one of the things that, as we're talking about control, I don't mean to go back to our last question, but this is one of those things I think I had the biggest rant on this show over, was thin content and why people think are thin. As Ken was talking about control of your website, it goes hand in hand with everything we're saying, is that as you look at SEO and technical SEO and on-page SEO, well then, yes, at the same time, you have control over your content. And get your head around the idea that 300 words is not a lot of content in the eyes of Google. It's getting into the game. So if you have less than that, what are we doing? What are we, other than the fact that you want to just cover yourself in one paragraph, but you make a deal with yourself, okay, I don't care about being seen at all. I just want to be able to explain. And as long as you are comfortable with that, I don't agree with it, but don't go thinking that a paragraph is ever going to cut the mustard with Google. Because that's what I think. I don't know about you guys, but I've had more conversations this year about, it seems like a lot. To who? To you? Like, you're not scientific. You don't know anything about algorithms. Like, no, this is Google. It's 300 words.
Unless all your competition only has 200 words on the topic, and then you're okay.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
That's actually a good point. Everything is relative.
Yeah.
That's right. But I mean, like to what you're saying, like people need to take advantage of both content and SEO and the tools like Google Search Console, and it all goes hand in hand. Don't just think, well, I can't do anything. Google makes all the decisions. I don't know who knows what their algorithm is. Yeah, none of us we don't work at Google, but we know this much. Google values content and they value good technical SEO site health. And if you have both of those, then you're on your way.
All right, good points. Now, Ian, I'm sure you've had this conversation with your clients, and some people they get really hung up on the day-to-day rankings of their keywords. And yesterday I ranked number 1, and today I ranked number 2. Does it really matter? And should they really be focused on overall trends?
Yeah. I actually look at SEO rankings similar to you would the stock market and your portfolio of stocks. You don't want to be an SEO day trader. You want to be in it for the long term, like mutual funds. You're trying to grow your portfolio over time. And I think that's a really healthy way to look at it. There's always fluctuations. When we run reports for clients, sometimes we see a keyword or a key phrase drop several points or several positions just because of when that search report was run. If I run it again an hour later, 2 hours later, it pops back up because Google's always playing. Think of it as, incredibly complex A/B testing always, because they're trying to see, hey, if we send traffic to this other site that's similar to this one, are people going to stay longer? Are they going to consume more information? Is it better for the searcher? So yeah, you have to take the long view. You can't take the short view. Obviously, I think a month trend report is actually a really healthy approach because it actually not only kind of steadies out what's happened during that month, but it also allows you to do comparative reporting between, June of 2021 versus June of 2020, because one of the other things I also see is that, and this isn't related to ranking, it's related to organic traffic, which is another key SEO metric that most businesses watch, and organic traffic can fluctuate according to seasonality for the business. So you also want to be kind of taking out that seasonality aspect and comparing the same month over the same month of the previous year, except, COVID last year really messed things up, but it's making metrics look really good right now for a lot of businesses. But I would say take the long approach.
Well, the other thing too is, we talk about individual keyword rankings, but it's also important to look at the cumulative impact of everything that you're doing to try to rank. And so that's usually expressed, in most of the things that I look at is called a visibility score.
Yep.
And you want to, the key is you want to see the trends going up where your visibility score is increasing. You're going to have individual volatility like crazy for individual keyword phrases, as Ian talked about. But the cumulative visibility score is a much more important statistic to look at. Don't fall into the trap of looking for each and every keyword phrase. And certainly don't fall into the trap of people who tell you that they can get you to rank on page 1 for a particular keyword phrase where it's completely obscure and has zero search traffic, because that really doesn't do anything to help your business. And there are a lot of people who push that, and it's like anybody who makes a guarantee. First of all, Google, they do not support businesses that make guarantees on how you can rank a website or a web page or a keyword phrase. Google has explicit language that talks about that. So anybody who promises that to you, you should run for the hills, because they are not telling you the truth. They are not telling you the truth. And you know what? Look, am I confident that I could rank a website for a keyword phrase? Yeah. Is it an important keyword phrase? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not. So,
well, and Ken, the one I see too a lot is the branded keyword phrases, right? Like if your company is A+ plumbing in a particular town, of course you're going to rank, or you better be
You
ranking
better be ranking,
number one,
yeah.
right? But a lot of companies use that as, hey, we've got you number one in this position. Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think, I have a friend of mine, and every time we get together for lunch, there hasn't been a time where he hasn't brought up semantic SEO, where he goes, Dan, people get so hung up on these rankings for keywords and things like that, and they don't think about the way people actually talk. And Google is going to get smarter and smarter about the way we talk and the way that, we've always kind of been in this mindset of, well, there's a broad match and an exact match and things like that, which is still important, of course. But I think we're going to have a time, if we're not kind of there in a sense of Google being able to say, yeah, I get where you're going with that. I think that's the next sort of evolution is keywords are going to be important, but I think Google will put 2 and 2 together of where you're going a lot better than where it's ever been before. And, so
they're already doing that,
Yeah,
and they're also making a big move towards voice search, which is a whole nother topic. But yes, they are looking at, it's less about an individual keyword and more about the context in which that is used, and the intent. And they're already doing that. And the other thing, going back to what Ken and Ian were saying, is that with Search Console and rankings now, we live in a mobile world, and you can do a search on your phone, walk 2 blocks down the road, and get a completely different result, depending on what you're searching for, because they're using your geographic location to deliver local search results. And but Ken, a little bit about keyword stuffing here. There was a time people would use the footer, the bottom section, usually their homepage, to list like every area they served, every service they offered, but it didn't actually link to any meaningful content. And they were basically, we now call keyword stuffing. Back then it wasn't that, because the Google algorithm wasn't that sophisticated. But what should they be doing instead of that? Because there's still websites that do that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that may have worked back in 2003, but
in 2004.
as Dan talked about, and as we, everything we've talked about today tells you why you shouldn't be doing that. You've got to have it. Thin content is one reason, and so even though you stuff a bunch of keywords and hide them, in this footer, so that the text is actually the same color as the color of the website, so that you don't even the visitor doesn't even see it,
which Google will penalize you for.
Yeah,
Google knows that trick.
Yeah. So it's just meaningless content from an SEO perspective. Now, it might be valuable content for your website visitor. It may be important for you to tell them, these are the 10 cities that we work in. That's good information. If you don't link those out, but don't stuff. I mean, don't put 200 in. Paul and I are in St. Louis. In St. Louis County alone, I think there are probably 50 little municipalities, maybe even more than that. It's insane. And some of these are 300 people, populations. Some of them are 24,000. It's just crazy. Well, it's common, still in St. Louis to see that people list each and every one of those. I remember HubSpot back in the early days, and this was back even in 2010 or 11 probably. They used to give you a tool that would generate all of the locations for you that you could put onto your website, just in that, so that you would have every city, every zip code, whatever you wanted to put on your website. There were tools around that did that for you. What's really much better practice is to create a page for each and every location that you serve from an SEO perspective. Write about that location. Tie it to other pieces of content on your website. Link it to the services pages that you offer for that location. In some cases, if it's a highly competitive area, you might need to have a page that's just dedicated to a combination of location plus service is the concept that you're trying to get that page to rank for. In other cases, it may be just enough to have a location page that you write about a particular location, and then a service page, and you don't need that bridge piece of content. And that's what SEO analysis will tell you. And part of it is experimentation. I mean, sometimes you just have to create some content and see what happens. And again, because things are changing all the time, one of the reasons you can't make any guarantees about ranking for Google is we don't have any control of Google. We don't know their algorithms. They don't publish that for a reason, because they don't want businesses to know that. And we don't control the competition. So you may have a competitor that decides to launch. They pick a great URL. They put really good content on their website. They work really hard to get it to rank. For your website, if you're not paying attention to that, they may eclipse you in your search rankings. And, so you can't control what somebody else does outside of your own business. All you can do is control what you do.
Hey, and guys on the call, have you noticed a dramatic shift in competitive analysis of people's websites over the last year? Like, I've seen dramatic, like where we were, some clients had the luxury of dominating an area for years. As of 2020, when COVID hit, we saw a lot of businesses starting to invest in doing websites right and SEO right, and we've seen them start to become like real SEO competitors now in the marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because for many businesses, their businesses actually plugged along and did even better, in certain economies and in certain niches, and the smart businesses made an investment in their website to improve their ranking during even the best of times. And that's really, I think, the strategy that you have to take.
But I think you also have to, in saying that, I'll just add on something that they're not doing, which is, I don't think they're taking Google My Business seriously enough. And I don't think they're watching the innovations of Google My Business seriously enough. For example, we are seeing Google My Business add features all the time for chat, for taking calls, for now in the last month, call history, right through Google My Business. And I will say this till I'm blue in the face. People go, "Oh, I don't know if I should do that or not," and I'm like, you kind of gotta, like, what do you think you're going to do? Like, jump on Bing or something? Like, this is what you got to do. Go with it. Because I think you have to sort of be all in on that. Absolutely do what you got to do with your website. But if I can't find you, if I can't have an accessible experience through Google is, as my friend John Hall from Switchbird has said, Google is making this be the destination too. And if you can't get your Google My Business totally optimized and totally posting there, then that's going to be something that impacts your local search rankings. I absolutely believe that. And that ties in with the features that they roll out. I believe that they are going to say, if you use this feature, we will reward you. And we will reward you ranking wise if you do more of the stuff we roll out. So
it's a combination, right? They have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's a combo.
They absolutely do. As a matter of fact, there's an interesting survey that I saw from Google that talks about, you've got to have both. You've got to have your Google My Business page. Hopefully that's showing up well on like map results and things like that. But that's not enough. You need to have your website, because way more people, significantly more people trust the content that's on your website that's on a third-party website, including a Google My Business page or another directory. So it's, a lot of people think, well, I don't really need to have much of a website in terms of an SEO presence because I've got this Google My Business page. Well, that's not enough, because the website content on your website and the interconnectivity and how you link your Google My Business and your website content back and forth is a huge uplifting factor. And it, so and at the end of the day, you don't own and control your Google My Business page the way you can own and control your website. So you need to have both. They have to have work hand in hand. I'm glad you brought that up, Dan, because it is a fundamental element of local SEO.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think it's kind of like I said, like we've all said, it is both, which means as you're thinking about optimization, I think reviews are part of optimization. I think some of these other
100%.
things are part of optimization.
Well, it's part of E.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of where I think everyone's head has to be is like, okay, do I have my home base as far as my website up and running in the way it should be fully optimized? And then, if that's the home, then Google My Business could be the door, and you got to have both. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that COVID has drug a lot of businesses kicking and screaming into the 19th century, whether they like it or not. From a technology standpoint, going back to what Ian said about competitive analysis, yes, you may have been dominating simply because your competition wasn't doing anything. And then COVID hit and they're like, okay, we really need to do something here. So they started investing in this, and you're just kind of ranking based on your reputation. Next thing you know, your competition is outranking you, and you're like, well, what happened? Well, what happened is your competition started doing anything, and like Ken said, you can't control what your competition does.
Yeah, I
But
mean,
you better
there's
be monitoring it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You can monitor, but you can't control what they do.
Exactly. Paul,
I mean,
can you explain what EAT stands for again? I think that'd be helpful.
Expertise, authority, and trust.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Expertise, authority, and trust.
Yeah. So that's a really key, simple concept that I think everybody listening to this podcast, they need to, understand, because it doesn't get any simpler than that. That's really a foundational concept when you're thinking about, the way Google is looking at websites.
Yeah, absolutely. And so moving on a little bit, we're 45 minutes in. Jen, in the past, we've just had SEO. We've referred to SEO and it was what it was. And now we've moved into Google is really putting a focus on local rankings. So now we have local SEO and we have traditional SEO. And so what's the difference? What makes local SEO different? And what do you have to do?
Local SEO. So what makes it different is, so think local SEO. Think of either a neighborhood or your city being in the search terms. So car mechanic, Back Bay, Thai restaurant, Queen West, that kind of thing. So it's really local to your neighborhood or your city. And it's interesting. Let me tell you a story about a local dry cleaner we were working with, and they were thinking there's no need for any of this local SEO. We're the local dry cleaner. Nobody's driving across town to have their shirts pressed at our place. Everybody in the neighborhood knows about us. Why do we even have to think about this local SEO stuff? And it happened to be, so this was a neighborhood in Boston, so the Back Bay neighborhood. And when we were asked that question, we were kind of like, well, there's something else here, but you might have a point. So we went and checked it out and found out that every year during that time, there were 742 new people moving into that neighborhood. And so with that, you move into a new neighborhood, whether it's for work or for, where you live, you don't know what are the local merchants, what are the local services. So what are you going to do? Get on your phone, get on the computer. I need a whatever, plus my neighborhood. And so with that kind of research that we did, we were able to convince them, not everybody knows that you're here. And this is how you're going to show up for the folks that are looking for your service in your local area. So that's local SEO as opposed to national SEO. And it's really important because folks are looking for that kind of product or service. and they're not traveling across town. They're not traveling across the country to get that product or service from you.
Yeah, and it also ties into your GMB, which is all about local.
Google My Business.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
And just because not everybody knows this, but sometimes a local business can easily outrank a national business for the same product or service because you have that local entity there, whereas a national or international business is actually trying to rank for multitudes of neighborhoods. And so sometimes there are some very quick ways to help a local business rank higher quickly against national competitors.
See,
including local content.
In the past.
Including local content.
Yes.
Yep.
Definitely. Dan, Google is making this move to mobile first indexing, and can you explain what that means? And I mean, not just from a dictionary perspective, what does it mean, but what does it mean for a local business and their website and how they should look at strategy and going about content and their website?
Yeah. Well, this is a thing that you will pick up about 100 times today. And when you're not picking that up, you're going to pick up one of these. And that will be about the 120 times that you don't think you look at that. But you do, because that screen time app will be your rude awakening that comes with your iPhone. And what it says to me is that you need to design and optimize your site for the mobile experience for people who use this. And obviously you need to have it for desktop and for tablet. But I believe that when you are thinking this first, then you will be communicating to people who are going to go find your site through that mechanism first. And I think Google has finally recognized that as well. Now, the interesting thing is sometimes I'll go to certain people's sites and they still are going there through desktop. The visitors are going there through desktop, go figure. But I think you're still better off, understanding, is the mobile experience everything that it can be? Am I losing anything by not only having it technically correct, but also just from a user experience standpoint, everything that I can get from the desktop, or am I sacrificing something that I shouldn't be? So I do think that Google has basically, in a nutshell, said people are going to find websites through phones. That's how they're going to do it. And if they don't do it that way, they're going to find it through tablets. So we should probably be really indexing these sites first through the mobile experience and understanding what that's all about, and then giving credence at the second or third to desktop. And that's a big switch.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess a 101 definition is Google is going to look at your website as how it looks and responds, goes back to user experience, page experience on a mobile device. And if that is significantly worse than a desktop experience, it's going to hurt your rankings, because they are going to look at how does your website perform on a mobile device. That's the priority. Even if most of your traffic comes from a desktop, Google doesn't care.
Right. And that's still really common, that the majority of several businesses' websites are still coming from desktop or laptop. They're not coming from mobile. But the reality is, when you look at overall what's happening, in terms of searches and usage on the web, almost 70% of all searches are happening now on mobile devices.
Yeah,
and this is where Google Search Console is really helpful too. If you've registered your website on there, it will have actually told you if and when it changed the algorithm to mobile first ranking. For many websites, that happened a few years ago, but you still occasionally see those notifications from Google that they've now switched your algorithm.
Yeah,
another reason to be on there.
This is really where I think a lot of people, as a result of the last year or so, have the definition. I wrote about this. The definition of local is changing as we speak, to be where you are, and where it may not be exactly with a brick and mortar presence necessarily. So this is why, it goes back to what you guys were saying about websites, and the mobile experience plays a part in this. Is as long as your website and mobile experience is everything it can be in every way, technical and user experience, then if you picked up and left South Carolina and right now you're in Sedona, but that's where you happen to do your business, then that's going to be the thing that you want to value a great deal. And yeah, for now, that's where you are locally, but the rest of the world just needs to understand what the services are that you bring from a great website and mobile experience perspective. And then you can worry about, should I do a service area instead of saying I'm in this town, So that's how important this is going to become.
Yeah, definitely. And, Ian has brought up Search Console a couple of times. And I think what's important to understand is chances are Google has crawled your website, and Search Console is there. It's not like Google Analytics where you have to put a tracking script on your website to get data. It's there. You just have to verify your domain. You can have a website for 5 years, and today you go into Search Console, you verify your domain, and you can go back and see historical data because Google has already crawled your website. You just never verified your domain and had access to it. So it is a good source of data. It's not always as accurate as some other things, but it is a good source of data.
So Paul, talking about having Google crawl your website, are there things that you can do to force that, make it happen in a more reliable, predictable way?
Yeah, you can submit a sitemap, which is absolutely critical. And if you matter of fact, if you update pieces of content, you should actually resubmit your sitemap and let Google know, because yes, they will at some point in time crawl your website and see it. But if you update some pieces, especially if it's cornerstone or major content, then you want to let Google know so you can resubmit that sitemap and tell Google, hey, I made some changes to some content here. Go crawl it and look at it. And you can force them to crawl it sooner than they normally would.
Yep.
But this is probably a good place to wrap it up. I mean, this is a huge topic. We could probably do several episodes on things like this. But I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and see everyone next week.